Imagine you're just 16 years old, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You are standing in the middle of this massive stadium. You're surrounded by, I don't know, tens of thousands of screaming, completely hostile fans.
Of the pressure.
Right. And you're far from home, and standing 22 yards away from you is a grown man, a professional athlete at the absolute peak of his physical power.
Right.
And his entire job, his one singular focus, is to hurl a rock-hard sphere of leather directly at your body at like 90 miles an hour.
It's terrifying just to visualize that. The sheer physics of it are just daunting.
Yeah, exactly. Now imagine that man runs in, hurls that rock-hard projectile, and it doesn't just bounce toward your bat. It rears up off the pitch and smashes directly into your face.
Oh, wow.
The impact completely fractures your nose. You are 16 years old, your helmet is rattled, your vision is totally blurred, and you are bleeding profusely on international television.
That is just, yeah, that's intense.
Your medical team rushes out, right? They're telling you to leave the field. Your opponent is just staring you down. So what do? Because human instinct, millions of years of evolutionary survival wiring, is screaming at you to run away.
Oh, absolutely. Every fiber of your nervous system is telling you to seek safety.
Yeah.
I mean, the amygdala has completely taken over at that point.
Exactly. But you don't run. You just wave the doctors away. You wipe the gushing blood off your face. You look back at the man who just broke your nose, and you take your stance to face the next ball.
That is wild.
Right. That is not just sports. That is the exact moment where a mortal human being begins to transform into something entirely different.
For sure.
So today, we're not just, reciting a biography. We are exploring the anatomy of sheer, unimaginable greatness. We're examining how a boy who survived that exact bloody scenario went on to become a figure that millions of people, literally and without any hyperbole, refer to as a god.
It is the absolute definition of examining the messy, chaotic human crucible that forges a legend. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are looking specifically at the awe-inspiring 24-year journey of Sachin Tendulkar.
We have a massive stack of sources in front of us today, too. We're looking at his complete legacy, the biographical records of his childhood, the staggering statistical milestones that honestly seem almost mathematically impossible.
They really do.
And, of course, his life after he finally stepped off the pitch. And our mission for you, the listener, whether you are, an aspiring athlete trying to make the team, a professional trying to navigate a brutal corporate ladder, or just someone who is intensely curious about how human potential is maximized, our mission is to extract the actionable mentorship lessons from Sachin's life.
Right, the real takeaways.
Exactly. We are tracking the evolution from a restless kid in Mumbai to a global sporting icon. Okay, let's unpack this, because the beginning of the story completely shatters the myth of the perfectly disciplined prodigy.
Oh, it really does. If you're listening to this and expecting the story of a quiet, intensely focused child who was meditating on a cricket pitch from the age of 4, you have to completely reset your expectations.
Yeah.
Greatness rarely starts neat and tidy.
No, it really doesn't. We have to start with the boy before the legend. Before we even utter the phrase God of Cricket, we are looking at a deeply relatable and honestly pretty chaotic kid.
Very chaotic.
He was born in 1973 in Bombay, which is now Mumbai, and his household was incredibly intellectual.
Right.
His father, Ramesh, was a highly respected Marathi language novelist and poet. His mother, Rajni, worked in the insurance industry, and he grew up in this cooperative housing society in Bandra East, which was essentially a colony built for writers and academics.
So a very quiet, studious environment.
Exactly. But here is the fascinating contradiction. Surrounded by poets and intellectuals, young Sachin was considered a bully.
Yeah, he was highly aggressive. I mean, the sources are very clear about this. He was picking fights at school. He was constantly getting into altercations with the new kids in the neighborhood.
Right.
He was just this ball of explosive, uncontainable physical energy in a household of quiet thinkers.
And what blows my mind is that he didn't even care about cricket at first. If you look in his early childhood, he was absolutely obsessed with tennis.
Oh, yeah.
And not just the sport of tennis, but a very specific player. He idolized the famously hot-headed, highly aggressive, racket-smashing American tennis player John McEnroe.
What's fascinating here is the psychological profile of the child we're looking at, right?
Yeah, why McEnroe?
Exactly, why McEnroe? Because McEnroe represented the externalization of everything young Sachin was feeling inside.
Yeah.
He had this immense bubbling well of raw, unguided aggression.
Right.
And McEnroe didn't apologize for his anger, He weaponized it. For an 8-year-old kid with too much energy and a penchant for fighting, McEnroe is the ultimate avatar.
I love that. The sources even say that at 7 or 8 years old, Sachin was literally growing his hair long and curly to match McEnroe's exact hairstyle.
That's hilarious.
He was wearing tennis headbands and sweatbands on his wrists all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He walked around his neighborhood carrying a tennis racket everywhere he went. He was fully cosplaying as the most combative athlete on the planet.
Yeah, he really was.
And this is where the story could have gone so wrong. A lot of families, especially academic families, would look at this aggressive, fighting, McEnroe-obsessed kid and decide to completely crush that behavior.
Right. The traditional authoritative response is suppression. You sit the kid down, punish the aggression, force them to be quiet, tell them to read a book, and just demand compliance.
Yeah, fall in line.
Exactly. But his family, and specifically his older half-brother Ajit, did something incredibly astute.
Yeah.
They recognized that this energy was going to boil over into something deeply destructive if it wasn't contained. But they didn't try to extinguish the fire. They realized you can't just tell a fire to stop burning, but you can put it in a furnace and use it to forge steel.
Oh, that is a phenomenal way to put it. They didn't view his aggression as a permanent defect. They just saw it as fuel that was currently powering the wrong engine.
Exactly.
So in 1984, Ajit decides to introduce 11-year-old Sachin to cricket, specifically to curb these bullying tendencies.
And that right there is the first major foundational mentorship lesson for you listening right now.
Yeah.
How often do we view our own flaws, or maybe the flaws of our children or the people we manage at work, as these fatal defects?
All the time.
Right. We see restlessness, we see a tendency to argue, we see aggression, and our immediate instinct is just, that is a problem to be eradicated.
Fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if it's just misdirected energy? What if that exact same trait, pointed in a different direction and given strict parameters, is the exact fuel required for greatness?
It's a complete reframe of human potential. I mean, it's like a high-energy startup pivoting its business model. Raw energy and passion are useless or even destructive until they are channeled into the right vehicle. You don't need to change who you are, you just need to find the arena where your specific brand of chaos is an advantage.
Beautifully said.
But, channeling that kind of intense energy requires a master guide. Ajit can hand his little brother a cricket bat, but you can't just drop a wild kid on a field and expect a miracle.
No, definitely not.
You need a crucible. You need someone who actually knows how to operate the furnace. And that transitions us to the mentor who actually built the foundation of Sachin's entire existence. We are talking about the legendary coach, Ramakant Ashrakar.
Coach Ashrakar at Shivaji Park.
Yeah.
If there is a patron saint of rigorous, unsentimental discipline in this story, it is him.
For sure.
And the story of their very first meeting is an absolute masterclass in understanding human psychology.
I was reading this part of the dossier and laughing out loud because it is just so relatable.
It really is.
So Ajit brings 11-year-old Sachin to Shivaji Park to meet Coach Ashrakar. This is the proving ground. Sachin steps up to bat knowing this legendary coach is evaluating his every single twitch.
All right.
And Sachin completely chokes. He freezes up. He's hyper aware of the observation. He's incredibly self-conscious, and he just does not play well at all. He looks incredibly mediocre.
Which is the most natural human response in the world. When we know we are being judged by an authority figure, our brain shifts from automatic fluid execution to manual, over-analytical control.
Yeah, you get in your own head.
Exactly. It's actually called the Hawthorne effect in psychology. Behavior changes when it is being observed. Ashrakar watches this stiff, nervous kid and essentially says, he's not ready, take him home.
And most coaches would stop right there, like, next kid in line, please.
Oh, absolutely.
But Ajit knows his brother. He knows that McEnroe energy is in there. It's just being suffocated by the pressure of the spotlight. So Ajit does something brilliant. He asks Coach Ashrakar to give Sachin one more chance, but he gives the coach a very specific instruction. He tells Ashrakar to step away, walk far back, and actually hide behind a tree so Sachin thinks the coach has gone home and the evaluation is over.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of mentorship and leadership, Ashrakar's response here is profoundly important.
How so?
Well, a lesser coach with a massive ego would have scoffed. They would have said, if this kid can't handle me standing right here looking at him, he doesn't have the mental toughness for my academy.
Yeah, like, toughen up, kid.
Exactly. But Ashrakar doesn't let ego dictate the interaction. He actually agrees. He walks away and hides behind the tree.
He physically removes the psychological barrier. And Sachin, thinking the pressure's completely off and he's just messing around in the nets again, just starts flowing.
Yeah.
The natural, aggressive, brilliant timing comes out. He starts hitting the ball with absolute purity. Akrakar, watching from behind the tree, immediately sees the undeniable generational talent. He walks back out and accepts him into the academy right there.
What Atrakar understood in that moment is that a great mentor doesn't just judge the output, right? They evaluate the environment, creating the output. He realized his presence was corrupting the data.
That's a great way to look at it.
And once he accepted Sachin, he took total, uncompromising control of his development. He told Sachin to change schools. He moved him to Sharadashram Vidyamandir School in Dadar simply because that school had a rich cricketing tradition and a phenomenal team. He was fully immersing the boy in the culture of the game.
He essentially designed a completely enclosed ecosystem for Sachin's development. And that leads us to the daily routine at Shivaji Park.
Correct.
We really need to set the scene here for the listener, because this isn't some pristine, climate-controlled indoor training facility. This is Mumbai in the 1980s.
Yes. Let's paint that picture. It is relentlessly hot. The humidity is suffocating.
Right.
The pitches at Shivaji Park are red dirt. They're often uneven, heavily used by dozens of teams. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it's physically exhausting just to stand in the sun, let alone engage in elite athletic training.
And Atrakar is running Sachin through these grueling, endless practice sessions, morning and evening. He would bat for hours in the nets. And for those who might not know, the nets are just enclosed practice pitches where bowlers line up one after another to throw at the batsman. It is pure, brutal repetition.
Yes.
And this brings us to one of my absolute favorite details in this entire story. It's the mechanism Atrakar used to forge Sachin's superhuman focus, the 1 rupee coin drill.
Oh, the methodology here is so brilliantly simple, yet it taps into some of the most complex neuroscience regarding human motivation and endurance.
I really want to break down exactly how this worked. So Sachin would practice for hours. He is sweating through his clothes, his muscles are burning, his hands are blistering inside his gloves. He reaches the point of utter, absolute physical exhaustion.
The breaking point.
Right. This is the exact moment where your form breaks down, your reflexes slow down by just a fraction of a second, and your brain just wants to quit. Right at that moment, Coach Akrakar would walk up to the stumps, the 3 wooden stakes Sachin is defending with his bat, and Atrakar would pull a 1 rupee coin out of his pocket and balance it right on top of the stumps.
And then the coach would make an announcement to every single bowler waiting in the nets. He established a clear binary rule. If any bowler could get a ball past Sachin's bat and hit those stumps, knocking the coin off, that bowler got to keep the money.
Wow.
It was a bounty. But if Sachin could survive the rest of the entire grueling session, sometimes another whole hour of facing fresh, highly motivated bowlers without getting out, Sachin got to keep the coin.
So wait, putting a tangible bounty on an exhausted 11-year-old kid, forcing professional or older bowlers to hurl a hard little ball at him with extra motivation, doesn't that border on reckless? I mean, some people today might call that overly harsh or even cruel.
It definitely looks harsh from the outside, but structurally, it is a masterpiece of psychological conditioning. Think about what happens in the brain when we are exhausted. Dopamine levels drop. The perceived effort to continue feels insurmountable.
Right.
By placing that coin on the stumps, Akrakar injected an immediate, highly tangible stakes-based scenario into a random Tuesday afternoon. He utilized loss aversion. Sachin wasn't just trying to win a coin. He was fighting to defend his pride from the horde of bowlers who wanted to take his prize. The coin suddenly made the exhaustion irrelevant.
He was essentially gamifying high-stakes pressure for a child. He was artificially inducing the exact neurological stress of a World Cup final into a dirty practice net. He was teaching Sachin's brain how to focus when the body has absolutely nothing left in the tank.
Exactly. Because raw talent gets you into the nets when you're fresh. But discipline, the ability to protect your wicket when your forearms are screaming and your vision is blurring, that is what wins championships.
Right.
Akrakar knew that in a real test match, you bat for days. You don't get to quit when you're tired.
And the result of this drill, over his childhood, Sachin won 13 of those 1 rupee coins. He survived the bounty 13 times.
That's incredible.
And here's the kicker, right? To this day, as a man who went on to become one of the wealthiest, most celebrated athletes on the planet, a man who owns luxury cars and massive estates, Sachin Tendulkar considers those 13 one-rupee coins to be among his most prized possessions in the world.
Which really tells you everything you need to know about his value system. He doesn't value the millions of dollars as much as he values the physical evidence of his own conquered exhaustion. Those coins are the literal bedrock of his greatness.
It really makes you stop and ask yourself, for everyone listening right now, what is your one rupee coin? What is that small tangible reward or that mental gamification that keeps you completely locked in during the grueling, exhausting, unglamorous parts of your own practice?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because we all have those moments where we want to mentally clock out, whether you're writing code at 2 a.m. or reviewing legal briefs or doing wind sprints. But the moment you want to quit is exactly the moment the true foundation is poured. If you don't have a coin on the stumps, you'll walk away.
And because he didn't walk away, the results in the real world became almost comical. By the time he was a teenager, he was dominating the domestic and schoolboy circuits to an absurd degree.
The numbers are hilarious. In 1988, when he was 15, he and his friend Vinod Kambli, who also went on to play for India, by the way, put together an unbroken 664-run partnership in a school game against St. Xavier's High School.
We should probably contextualize that for non-cricket fans.
Please do.
In a normal, high-level professional game, a partnership of 100 or 150 runs between two batters is considered excellent. To score 664 runs together without either of them getting out means they were batting for hours upon hours, absolutely torturing the opposition bowlers. The opposing team must have been questioning their life choices. Sachin alone scored 326 runs in that innings and remained not out.
I actually read that the bowlers were literally crying on the field because they just couldn't get these two kids out. It's total domination.
Yeah, it's wild.
But amidst all this batting success, there's this incredible detour. In 1987, Sachin actually goes to the MRF Pace Foundation in Madras. He doesn't want to be a batter. He wants to be a fast bowler.
Oh, that's right.
He wants to be the guy hurling the ball. But the foundation is run by the legendary Australian fast bowler Dennis Lillee. Lillee takes one look at Sachin's bowling, is totally unimpressed, and basically tells him to forget about it and just stick to batting.
Which is arguably the greatest piece of unsolicited advice in the history of sports.
Yeah.
If Dennis Lillee had tried to coddle him or said, keep working on it, kid, the history of cricket would be fundamentally different.
Thank goodness for blunt Australian honesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this transition brings us to a massive shift in our story. We are moving from the simulated pressure of Shivaji Park and the schoolboy records into literal physical danger. We are transitioning from a domestic marvel to an international phenomenon.
Real test.
Exactly. Because in November 1989, at the age of just 16 years and 205 days, Sachin is selected to make his test match debut for the Indian national team.
And the selectors did not give him a gentle introduction. They didn't start him against a lower-ranked team in friendly conditions. He is making his debut against Pakistan in Karachi.
We have to explain the stakes here. India versus Pakistan is not just a sports rivalry.
No, not at all.
It is one of the most intense, politically charged, historically complex, and emotionally explosive rivalries on the planet. The pressure of this match for a 10-year veteran would be suffocating. For a 16-year-old kid, it is practically a crucible of fire.
And to make matters worse, Pakistan possessed one of the most lethal pace attacks in the history of the sport. A pace attack refers to the fast bowlers on a team. And Pakistan had giants, Imran Khan, Wasim Akram, and a young debutant named Waqar Younis.
Let's break down what facing a pace attack actually means for the listener. We are talking about grown men, professional athletes at the peak of human conditioning, sprinting in and hurling a projectile at you. A cricket ball is made of solid cork wrapped in tight leather with a raised seam stitched around the middle. It is essentially a red rock.
A very hard rock.
And these guys are bowling it at over 90 miles per hour or 145 kilometers per hour. And unlike baseball, the ball bounces off the pitch before it reaches the batter, meaning it can violently change direction or speed off the turf.
Which leads us exactly to the scenario you painted at the very beginning of this deep dive, the fourth and final test match of that series. They're playing in Sialkot. The pitch is green, which means it helps the fast bowlers make the ball bounce unpredictably. Sachin is at the crease, and Waqar Younis, who is incredibly fast and incredibly hostile, bowls a bouncer.
For those unfamiliar, a bouncer is a specific tactical delivery. The bowler deliberately slams the ball into the pitch short of the batter so that instead of arriving at waist or knee height, it violently rears up directly toward the batter's throat or head.
Yeah.
It is designed to intimidate, to induce fear, and to force the batter into a panicked mistake.
At 90 miles an hour, from the moment the ball leaves the bowler's hand, the batter has roughly 0.4 seconds to react. That is less time than it takes to blink twice. You have to read the trajectory, calculate the bounce, adjust your footwork, and decide whether to duck, weave, or attempt to hit a ball that is literally hunting your skull.
And at 16 years old, Sachin's calculation is just a fraction of a second too late. The ball flies up and smashes directly into his nose. No helmet grill could completely protect him from the sheer force of that impact.
It's brutal.
The dossier is graphic about this. The impact fractures his nose. He collapses. There is blood gushing everywhere, soaking his shirt. The entire stadium goes dead silent.
From a physiological standpoint, his body has just experienced significant trauma. The brain's immediate response to a facial fracture and sudden blood loss is shock.
Right.
The medical team sprints onto the field. The non-striker, Navjot Singh Sidhu, runs down, expecting Sachin to be stretchered off. Every single rational adult in that stadium expected the 16-year-old kid to take medical retirement for the day, go to the hospital, and maybe reconsider his career choices.
I mean, if I'm his parents watching on TV, I'm screaming at the screen for him to get off the field. But this is the moment. This is the fighter pilot choosing not to eject when the engine catches fire. Because pulling the ejection seat means you accept defeat, and Sachin's neural pathways had been rewired by Akhirkar. The doctors tell him to leave. And Sachin's response, he pushes them away. He refuses the stretcher. He asks for a towel. He wipes the gushing blood off his face. He looks at the umpire and he says 2 words in Hindi. Main Kalega. I will play.
I will play. It gives you chills.
It really does.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of what makes a champion, this moment in Sialkar was a broadcast to the entire cricketing world. It proved that his mental toughness was actually superior to his prodigious physical technique. Handling failure, and specifically handling direct, terrifying physical intimidation without breaking, is the invisible requirement of greatness.
When he wiped that blood away, he wasn't just showing Waqar Younis that he wasn't scared. He was proving to himself that the discipline he learned facing the 1 rupee coin drill was stronger than his own biological amygdala response.
Yes.
The body screamed run, but the training said protect the stumps.
And he did. He hit the very next ball for a boundary.
Wow.
He stayed on the pitch, bleeding, and scored 57 runs, helping India save the test match. That toughness set the stage for everything that followed over the next 2 decades.
That survival mindset saved him in Sialkot. But mere survival doesn't make you a god. To completely dominate a sport, you have to combine that physical grit with an almost terrifying level of tactical genius.
Absolutely.
You have to move from surviving the game to intellectually dismantling it. And we see that exact collision perfectly realized 9 years later, which brings us to 1998 and what the entire cricket world universally refers to as the Desert Storm.
Oh, this is a spectacular era to analyze. This is where we see the evolution from the brave, bleeding prodigy into an absolute peerless tactical master. His physical abilities are peaking, but his intellectual approach to preparation is what truly separates him from the rest of the species here.
So let's set the stage. It's April 1998, the Coca-Cola Cup. The tournament is being held in Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. India is facing the Australian national team, who are the undisputed powerhouse of the era. And Australia possesses a weapon of mass destruction named Shane Warne.
Shane Warne is arguably the greatest spin bowler in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
The clash between Tendulkar and Warne in 1998 was the heavyweight title fight of the decade.
Yeah.
Ali versus Frazier. It was the absolute pinnacle of batting technique against the absolute pinnacle of bowling wizardry.
I want to pause and explain what Shane Warne actually did, because to understand Sachin's greatness here, we need to understand the puzzle he was trying to solve. Warne was a leg spinner. What does that actually mean mechanically?
A fast bowler relies on sheer speed and bounce to defeat the batter. A leg spinner, on the other hand, relies on deception, physics, and violent rotation.
Okay.
Shane Warne would impart massive revolutions on the cricket ball using his wrist. As the ball traveled through the air, this rotation caused the Magnus effect, the same physics that makes a curveball curve in baseball.
Oh, right.
The ball would literally drift sideways in the air, deceive the batter in flight, and then, when it pitched on the dirt, the spin would cause it to violently change direction or turn, away from the batter's bat.
It's like trying to hit a ball that is actively trying to evade your bat like a sentient creature.
Yeah.
Warren was a master of making the batter look foolish. He would set traps. He was a psychological manipulator.
Totally.
So we arrive at this specific match in Sharjah. India needs to score a massive amount of runs just to qualify for the tournament final. Sachin walks out to bat. And what follows is considered one of the greatest displays of hitting in history.
The legendary.
He scores an explosive 143 runs off just 131 balls. He hits 5 massive sixes, which is hitting the ball completely over the boundary rope without it bouncing, the equivalent of a home run against legendary bowlers like Damian Fleming, Michael Kasparovich, and the great Shane Warne himself.
And the drama of this innings is cinematic. I mean, in the middle of his onslaught, a massive blinding sandstorm sweeps across the stadium. The wind is howling, visibility drops to 0, and the players literally have to run off the field to take cover. Hence the name, the Desert Storm.
It's almost mythical. The skies darken, the wind howls, and when the dust settles, Sachin walks back out and just continues to completely dismantle the Australian attack. It was so flawless that in 2020, a poll from the International Cricket Council officially declared this the greatest one-day international innings of his career.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the core mentorship lesson for this section. The match itself, the spectacle of the sandstorm, the sixes flying into the roaring crowd, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
That is what the television audience saw.
Right.
But the real victory happened in secret, weeks before the storm hit.
Yes, I was reading the notes on his preparation for this tour, and I stumbled on a detail about a guy named Laxman Sivaramakrishnan. Who is that, and what was Sachin doing with him?
This is the secret to the Desert Storm. Sachin knew that Shane Warne was going to be the biggest threat in the upcoming series. He knew Warne liked to bowl into the rough patches outside the batter's leg stump, using the deteriorated pitch to create unpredictable spin.
Okay, so he knows the strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Sachin didn't just show up to the stadium and rely on his great reflexes. He actively sought out Laxman Sivaramakrishnan, who was a former Indian leg spinner, and he hired him to simulate Shane Warne in the practice nets in Chennai.
So he essentially built a sparring partner specifically designed to mimic his worst nightmare.
Exactly. Sachin had the pitch groundsman deliberately scuff up and destroy the area outside his leg stump to mimic a Day 5 test match pitch.
Wow.
He told Sivaramakrishnan to bowl into those rough patches repeatedly. And Sachin practiced stepping out of his crease, moving his feet with incredibly precise biomechanics to hit the ball on the full, meaning he would hit it before it had a chance to bounce and spin.
This raises an important question, though. We watch a guy hit 143 runs in a sandstorm, and we call it magic. We call it godlike genius. But isn't there a fine line here between discipline and an unhealthy obsession? I mean, he is orchestrating a highly specific, controlled environment to hard code his muscle memory against one single human being.
It borders on obsessive, yes, but that is the cost of entry at the apex of human achievement.
Fair point.
He understood that Warne wasn't just a bowler. Warne was a complex mathematical equation that needed to be solved intellectually in a controlled environment before he could be beaten physically in a chaotic one. If he waited until he was in Sharjah to figure out how to hit Warne, he would have lost.
And the statistical result of that obsessive preparation is staggering. During the Test match series, part of that 1998 tour, Sachin finished with 446 runs at an average of over 111. But here's the most absurd stat of the entire rivalry.
I know this one.
Across the 5 major encounters in that series, Sachin conceded his wicket to Shane Warne only once. He absolutely dominated the greatest spinner of all time.
It got to the point where, after the series concluded, Shane Warne ruefully joked to the press that he was genuinely having nightmares about his Indian nemesis.
That's amazing.
He said he was literally waking up in a cold sweat, dreaming of Sachin dancing down the pitch and hitting him over his head for 6.
When you prepare so thoroughly that you give the greatest bowler of a generation clinical nightmares, you have transcended sports. You are operating in the realm of psychological warfare.
Totally.
And the takeaway for you listening is that peak performance is never, ever an accident. Raw talent gets you a seat at the table, but granular, hyper-specific, scenario-based preparation is what allows you to clear the board. He didn't just practice batting. He practiced batting against Shane Warne, pitching into the rough on leg stump. Specificity is the hallmark of greatness.
However, we must be careful not to paint this as a frictionless upward trajectory. A 24-year international career is never a straight line to the summit.
No, of course not.
It can't be. The human body and the human mind are not designed to sustain that level of perfection indefinitely.
Right. And I think to truly appreciate his greatness, to understand the reality of his journey, we need to walk through the deep, dark valleys Sachin had to cross. It wasn't all sandstorms and giving the opposition nightmares. Sometimes the nightmares were entirely his own.
The weight of the crown he wore is incredibly heavy, perhaps heavier than any other athlete in modern history. When you are dubbed the god of cricket by a nation of 1 billion people, the parameters of success become impossibly narrow. Every single time you fail, it is not just a personal disappointment, it is treated as a national mourning event.
Let's talk about the psychological burden of what the cricket world calls the nervous 90s. The sources note a staggering statistic. In his international career, Sachin was dismissed 27 times when his score was between 90 and 99 runs.
That's a lot.
In the year 2007 alone, he was dismissed 5 times in the 90s, and 3 of those times he was out at exactly 99 runs. Can you explain the psychology here? You bat perfectly for hours, you face hundreds of balls, you do 99% of the hard work, and you are just one single run away from the ultimate milestone of a century, and your brain just stutters. Why does a master suddenly choke?
It is a profound demonstration of the vulnerability of the human brain under pressure. When he is on 40 runs or 60 runs, he is operating what psychologists call process-oriented thinking.
Okay.
He is just watching the ball and reacting. He is in the flow state. But when he reaches 99, the context shifts. The crowd is on its feet. The stadium is deafening. The cameras are zooming in. Suddenly, his brain shifts from process-oriented to outcome-oriented thinking.
He stops looking at the physics of the ball and starts thinking about the historical weight of the century.
Precisely. He starts thinking about the milestone, the relief of achieving it, the fear of missing it. That cognitive load disrupts the automatic motor functions. The grip on the bat tightens just a fraction. The footwork becomes just a millimeter hesitant.
And that's all it takes.
Exactly. And at the elite level, that tiny hesitation is all the bowler needs to induce an edge and get him out. It humanizes him completely. It shows that despite his technical perfection, the psychological pressure of expectation is a crushing burden.
And it wasn't just mental battles. He had brutal, career-threatening physical battles, too. In 2004, a severe tennis elbow injury completely sidelined him. Now, for a layman, tennis elbow sounds like a mild annoyance you get at the country club. Why is this an existential threat to a world-class batsman?
Because batting at the elite level, particularly the way Sachin played, relies entirely on the precise, explosive transfer of power through the wrists, the forearms, and the elbows. Tennis elbow is severe inflammation of the tendons that join the forearm muscles on the outside of the elbow. Every single time the ball impacts the bat at 90 miles an hour, a shockwave travels directly up the shaft of the bat into those inflamed tendons. The pain is blinding. It weakens the grip. You literally cannot hold the bat securely, let alone swing it with power.
He was out of the game for most of the year. He had to undergo surgery. And when your body starts failing you after 15 years of continuous international play, the whispers start. The media starts writing the obituaries on your career. People start asking if his reflexes are gone, if the magic has faded.
It's inevitable.
And these physical and mental struggles culminated in a profound, incredibly public leadership crisis.
This is a crucial chapter. Sachin actually had 2 tenures as the official captain of the Indian national team during his career. And mathematically, they were not successful.
No.
His win percentage in test matches as captain was just 16%. In one-day internationals, it was barely 31%.
By 1997, the team was performing poorly under his leadership. The pressure was mounting. Former Indian captain Mohammad Azharuddin even made a rather cutting public remark about Sachin, saying, "It's not in the small one's destiny to win."
Ouch.
That is a harsh thing to say about your country's greatest player, but it highlights a really difficult reality about human talent. Being the absolute best individual performer in the world does not automatically make you the best leader of people.
It is often called the curse of knowledge. When you are a genius, when the mechanics of the game come so naturally to you, it can be incredibly frustrating to lead players who do not possess your level of talent or discipline.
Right, because you just expect them to get it.
You expect them to see the matrix the way you do. And when they can't, communication breaks down. Sachin found that the immense administrative and psychological burden of managing 11 different personalities was actively detracting from his ability to just go out and score runs.
The ultimate low point, the darkest valley of his entire career, came during the 2007 World Cup. India had a disastrous campaign in the West Indies. They were heavily favored, but they were knocked out in the early group stages, suffering a humiliating loss to Bangladesh.
A huge upset.
Sachin, who had been pushed down the batting order by the controversial coach Greg Chappell, scored a dismal 7 against Bangladesh and a osa against Sri Lanka.
The backlash back home in India was apocalyptic. Effigies were burned in the streets. The media coverage was vitriolic. Ian Chappell, a respected commentator and brother to the coach, actually wrote a syndicated newspaper column explicitly stating it was time for Sachin Tendulkar to look in the mirror and retire.
The sources tell us that in the aftermath of that 2007 World Cup, Sachin suffered from deep depression. The weight of letting down 1 billion people, the personal failures, his aging body, the relentless media scrutiny, it all finally broke through the armor he built at Shivaji Park.
It was too much.
He isolated himself. He seriously considered retiring from the sport completely right then and there.
It took an intervention from 2 crucial figures to stop him. One was the West Indian cricketing legend Sir Viv Richards, who called him and reminded him of his pedigree.
Wow.
And the other was his older brother Ajit, the exact same brother who had handed him a tennis racket and redirected his aggressive energy 23 years earlier. Ajit sat him down and convinced him that his story couldn't end on a failure.
It's wild to think about. We almost lost the last 6 years of his career, which holds some of his most mythical achievements because he was just crushed under the psychological weight of it all.
Yeah.
But here is the massive leadership lesson that emerges from this darkness. Later in 2007, the president of the Board of Control for Cricket in India, Sharad Pawar, approached Sachin. They had fired the coach, they were restructuring the team, and they officially offered the captaincy back to Sachin. They wanted him to lead the nation again.
And Sachin did something truly remarkable. He declined, he said no, and instead, he selflessly recommended a young, long-haired wicketkeeper named MS Dhoni for the job.
If we look closely at that specific decision, it is the absolute pinnacle of mature self-awareness. True greatness requires the humility to acknowledge your own limitations.
Absolutely.
Sachin realized that the ego-driven desire to be the captain was a trap. Recognizing that you are infinitely more valuable to your organization as a specialized individual contributor rather than the ultimate team leader takes immense ego-shattering humility.
It's the perfect professional analogy.
Yeah.
How many times do we see a brilliant 10x-led software engineer get promoted to CEO or VP of engineering simply because it's the next step on the ladder?
All the time. And suddenly they are miserable.
Right. They spend all day managing spreadsheets and interpersonal conflicts, and they stop coding, which is the exact thing that made them valuable in the first place. Sachin realized that becoming the CEO of the team would ruin what he was best at doing.
Sometimes stepping back from formal leadership is the ultimate act of leadership. He saw that MS Dhoni had a totally different temperament. Dhoni was calm, stoic, and immune to the media chaos.
He was known as Captain Cool.
Exactly. Dhoni could absorb the stress of managing the team, which would free Sachin up to retreat into his bubble and just be a master batsman again.
And that decision to relinquish control, to trust a younger leader to handle the chaos, completely rejuvenated him. It lifted the psychological fog. It allowed him to stay in the game, heal his body, and push toward 2 of the most legendary milestones in the history of all sports. Which brings us to the final act, scaling the final peaks.
Free from the captaincy, Sachin pushes forward. We are going to fast forward through a late career renaissance to the year 2011, the ICC World Cup. And this time, the stakes are unimaginably high because the tournament is being hosted in India.
Oh, the pressure of a home World Cup.
This is his 6th attempt at winning the World Cup. He is 38 years old. He is firmly in the twilight of his career. Everyone in the world knows this is the last dance. The pressure is astronomical. 1 billion people expect him to win the trophy on home soil.
Yet, instead of folding under the pressure like he did in the 2007 campaign, he absolutely thrives. He is playing with a liberated mind. He amasses 482 runs in the tournament, averaging over 53 runs an innings, making him India's leading run scorer.
Incredible.
He guides the team through the knockouts, and India defeats Sri Lanka in a tense final at Wankhede Stadium, located right in his home city of Mumbai.
The scenes after that victory are iconic. The team bursts onto the field, they lift Sachin onto their shoulders and carry him around the stadium in a victory lap. Virat Kohli, who was just a fiery young player at the time, delivered one of the most famous quotes in sports history.
What did he say?
He said, "He has carried the burden of the nation for 21 years. It is time we carried him on our shoulders." Sachin calls it the proudest moment of his life. He is openly shedding tears of joy on the pitch. He finally got the one elusive trophy that validated his entire journey. But the universe wasn't done with him yet. There was still one more statistical peak to scale, and it almost broke him completely.
The march to the 100th international century.
We need to explain this because the numbers are just stupid. A century is scoring 100 runs in a single innings. It is the gold standard for a batter. At this point, Sachin was sitting on 99 centuries across test matches and one-day internationals combined.
Unheard of.
No other player in the history of the sport had ever come remotely close to this number. And so the entire world stopped to watch him try to get number 100. Every single time he walked out to bat, the media, the fans, the commentators, the opposing players, it was all anyone could talk about.
It became a suffocating, paralyzing media circus. And we go back to the psychology of the nervous 90s, but magnified 1,000 times.
He goes to tour England in 2011. He doesn't get the century. He plays against the West Indies at home, no century. He goes to Australia, no century. The wait drags on for over a year. Yeah. He's getting out in the 80s, the 90s. The mental block was massive.
The anticipation was killing everyone.
Finally, in March 2012, playing against Bangladesh during the Asia Cup in Mirpur, he manages to push a single run to square leg and completes the 100th century. But what is absolutely fascinating is his reaction. He takes his helmet off, looks at the sky, but he doesn't look ecstatic. The sources note he later confessed it was a deeply mentally onerous task. He said he was glad it was over.
Let's break down why that milestone became a prison. Why does scoring a century become a mental block for a man who has already executed that exact same feat 99 times prior?
Yeah, why?
Because the execution was no longer about the physics of hitting the ball. It was entirely about managing the crushing weight of external expectations. The 100th century wasn't for him. He had nothing left to prove. It was a debt he felt he owed to the billion people demanding it.
Imagine having a billion people literally dissecting your performance at work every single day for over a year, waiting for you to complete one specific project. It's paralyzing. I have to ask, how did his childhood discipline, how did the 1 rupee coin drill allow him to survive that kind of toxic, hyper-pressurized environment without completely snapping or quitting?
It goes back to the concept of focusing on the absolute smallest unit of actionable reality. When the macro environment, the media narratives, the historical weight, the screening fans becomes too large and terrifying for the human brain to process, the greatest minds shrink their focus to the micro.
Shrink the focus?
You don't walk out to bat thinking about the 100th century.
Right.
You think about the placement of your front foot on the very next delivery. You think about keeping your head still. You focus entirely on the coin balanced on the stumps. He retreated into the basic, fundamental mechanics of the discipline he learned in the red dirt of Shivaji Park when he was 11 years old. Shrink the world until you can control it. That is how you survive.
So what does this all mean? Having reached this impossible statistical summit, 100 international centuries, over 34,000 international runs, a World Cup victory, surviving the bouncers, the injuries, the depression, we have to zoom out, we need to look at Sachin's permanent imprint on the sport itself and on the cultural fabric of his country. Let's look at the evolution of his legacy.
His legacy is deeply multidimensional. Technically speaking, he evolved the modern mechanics of cricket. As his body aged, as the tennis elbow and back spasms robbed him of the explosive, youthful aggression that allowed him to dominate Shane Warne, he didn't stubbornly cling to his old style. He adapted. He incorporated highly unorthodox strokes into his arsenal.
The dossier mentions things like paddle sweeps and scoops over short fine leg. Explain how changing his shots actually helped him survive physically.
It's all about physics and redirecting energy rather than creating it. A traditional straight drive requires immense power from the batter's core and forearms to hit the ball back past the bowler.
Right, pure power.
A paddle sweep, however, involves dropping down on one knee and using the pace that the bowler has already imparted on the ball, just gently angling the bat to deflect the ball behind the batter where there are fewer fielders. It requires exquisite timing, but vastly less physical force. By incorporating these deflections, he reduced the stress on his battered elbows and back, allowing him to maintain elite scoring consistency well into his late 30s.
He substituted raw power with geometric efficiency. But his cultural legacy is even bigger than his technical evolution. We mentioned it at the beginning, that famous fan quote that became a defining slogan. Cricket is my religion and Sachin is my God. And it wasn't just a catchy t-shirt slogan.
No, they meant it.
You literally had fans undertaking extreme activities. The sources mention instances of deep psychological distress, fasting, and tragically, even instances of self-harm by fans when he suffered failures or injuries. The level of worship was terrifyingly intense. Former players noted that Sachin had to lead a completely secluded lifestyle in Mumbai. He couldn't just walk down the street. He sometimes had to wear a wig and a fake mustache just to go watch a movie in a theater. He would go for drives at 3 in the morning just to experience the feeling of silence away from the crowds.
The psychological toll of being treated as a deity cannot be overstated. When a nation projects all its hopes, anxieties, and need for validation onto one human being, it usually breaks them. And yet, how did he respond to that deification? When reporters constantly asked him about the God of Cricket title, his response was incredibly grounded. He simply said, "I am not God of Cricket. I make mistakes. God doesn't."
That is the profound humility of a man who knows exactly how the sausage is made. He knows how hard he had to work, how many times he failed in the 90s, how much his elbow hurt, and how close he came to quitting in 2007. He never bought into his own myth because he remembered the blood and seal caught.
Exactly. And he passed that grounded reality on to an entirely new generation of cricketers who grew up watching him. It's incredibly poignant that in his 200th and final test match in November 2013 against the West Indies, when Sachin walked off the pitch after his final innings, the next man to walk out to bat was Virat Kohli.
Wow, passing the torch.
The baton was passed directly from one generation's master to the next. Sachin's 24-year career mirrored India's own rise on the global stage, transforming him into a living symbol of excellence and national pride. In 2014, recognizing this profound cultural impact, he became the first sports person and the youngest recipient ever to be awarded the Bharat Ratna, which is India's absolute highest civilian award.
But the greatness didn't stop when he hung up his boots. His post-retirement life has been defined by a quiet but immense dedication to philanthropy. He served as a nominated member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha, and though he faced some political criticism for his attendance records, he silently donated his entire MP salary, nearly 90 lakh rupees, directly to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund.
That's substantial.
He has been deeply involved with UNICEF as a goodwill ambassador for South Asia. He's funded schools, donated retinal cameras to hospitals to fight preventable blindness, sponsored the education of hundreds of children through the NGO Upnalaya, and even physically went out to sweep the streets of Mumbai to promote the Swachh Bharat mission for sanitation.
It is a remarkable second act. He took the immense cultural capital he generated with a piece of willow wood and leveraged it into tangible humanitarian impact.
So we set out today to extract the actionable mentorship lessons from this massive, sprawling dossier. Let's distill them down for you. Number 1, raw energy and even apparent flaws like childhood aggression do not need to be suppressed. They can be redirected into phenomenal discipline if you find the right environment and the right mentor.
Absolutely.
Number 2, specific, highly targeted preparation will always defeat raw talent. Don't just practice. Practice for the specific Shane Warne you are going to face.
Prepare for the worst case scenario.
Number 3, true greatness requires the ultimate self-awareness and humility to know when to step back and let someone else lead, as he did with MS Dhoni, so you can focus on your actual strengths.
Yep. Put your ego aside.
And number 4, you have to build a mental resilience that is stronger than your biological fear response, whether that means taking a bouncer to the nose at 16 or finding a way to focus on the 1 rupee coin when a billion people are screaming your name.
It is a profound blueprint for high achievement. It clearly demonstrates that greatness is not an innate magical quality you are simply born with. It is a lifelong, grueling discipline. It is a series of choices made in the exhausted hours of practice nets, behind closed doors, long before the stadium lights ever turn on.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over today. Sachin Tendulkar possessed what many experts, including the legendary Sir Donald Bradman himself, considered the most technically perfect batting style in the history of the sport.
The absolute best.
By the end of his career, he had absolutely nothing left to prove. He had the money, the unbreakable records, the absolute adoration of his country. Yet, the sources note that right up until his 200th and final test match, at 40 years old, he continued to practice in the nets with the desperate, obsessive intensity of a rookie who was fighting to keep his spot on the team.
That's the 1 rupee coin mentality right there.
He was still refining his mechanics. He was still practicing left-handed throws to improve his fielding. If the man universally referred to as the god of cricket never ever believed that he was done learning, what does that mean for the rest of us in our daily pursuits? How can you apply that one rupee coin mentality to your life tomorrow, knowing that the practice never actually ends?
A brilliant question to carry forward into whatever arena you operate in.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the making of a legend. Until next time, keep your eye on the coin.